Hi, welcome. In this video, I'd like to discuss the issue of appearances, and again, understanding that training itself, the process, goes beyond just the picture of things, beyond just how dogs respond and move around and go through a certain type of a position-based narrative. It's really to go deeper than that and actually be able to look at the motives, okay, that underpin the script or the picture itself, to come to an understanding of the process itself. And again, when people are seeking answers as to why it is that there's a picture problem as it relates to both in the training environment and even in the home environment, that things can look a certain way but be completely upside down. And again, this is the issue of this type of appearance-based narrative that is very, very popular right now in the dog training world. In fact, the majority of dog trainers invest at some level in approaching training as some sort of a learning-based exercise. And the problems with that, again, when you begin to approach training that way to overcome behavior issues once they're ongoing, understand that the motives of the dog are already sideways. The dog's already holding control. You already have control issues. And so when you begin to frame it up that way, when you begin to invest in that picture as the dog is responding and going into various positions, it's very common for dogs to be able to hold control even as they're going through the motions. And the issue in the home environment itself is that oftentimes people will say, well, my dog is pretty good, except. Well, what I would encourage people to think about is, talking about the issue about motives, is the pretty good part is actually not good at all oftentimes, okay? Because the problem is that dogs can look very, very balanced. They can look calm and balanced, even as they're gaining power and control in the relationship through the person themselves. And so the dog liking to be with a certain person or appearing happy and balanced at times is the issue of liking to be in control. Okay, so when we look at the reaction of dogs, what we'll do is we'll look at it through an emotional lens, and we won't actually consider that the motives of the dog may not be what they appear to be. But here's the thing, is the same holds true. The examples I use when I talk about dogs being social relational animals, the same holds true in the human world. If you look at why it is or how it is that people's motives themselves, people how they respond. So when you see, say, if you're dealing, say, with a selfish child, you could say, if I want that selfish child to do certain things for me or go and do a certain thing, I could incentivize them or hold out the kind of the carrot of getting something out of the deal. They'll do that thing that I want, but it doesn't mean that the motives are cleaning up, the child has any respect, okay? But just from a superficial appearance-based type of view, it will, if I'm not careful, I can make, I can actually, interpret it that way. I can, look at that and say, well, good things must be happening. But again, this is what's happening in the dog training world right now, is that very, very common for people just to approach behavior problems that way and to frame it up as some sort of a learning-based exercise. And what they're doing is they're taking this response-based, position-based narrative, okay, and trying to package that up or market it as something good's happening. And this is where really important to understand is right out of the starting gate, it's important to identify what the process is. Okay, what's really happening, what needs to happen to make sure that meaningful change is actually going to take place. But through that is to understand that right from the beginning, when a dog is already experiencing behavior issues and problems, the motives are already sideways. The dog already has control issues. And so when you step on the scene and begin to frame it up that way and work off this type of a learning-based, incentivized, position-based script, a dog can continue to hold control even as they're going through the motions, because of how that frames up. Okay, because again, it's no different than the example I use with in the human world. It's the same based on the fact dogs are social relational animals. And this is why, again, people are looking for answers and wondering why it is that oftentimes there can be a complete disconnect between how things look in the training environment and the reality of whether behavior issues are actually changing or not. It's very common for people to leave the, invest in training for a certain period of time, only to discover, well, nothing's really changing. What's happening here? It must be the dog's fault. And in reality, no, it's actually the approach. It's actually a failure to identify the process itself, to frame it up through approaching training for what it is. It's a relational changing process. That's a key point to understand. Training is not a learning-based exercise, but if you approach it as a learning-based exercise, just consider the fact that you could have major problems as a result because of a failure to identify the process properly, to approach it properly, to make sure that the motors are going to clean up, and that you're going to go beyond just the picture and be able to put everything into right relationship. So again, I encourage anyone looking for answers, check out my website. I have lots of great information. You're not going to find any other trainers out there talking the way I'm talking. And that in itself shows you just, why there's major problems in the dog training world. The majority of trainers, like 99% of all trainers, approach training as some sort of learning-based exercise at some level. And again, that can be, I talk about those issues, how it is that things can definitely, that can be a problem for many people, and it is. So again, I have lots of great information on my website, lots of great training options as well. Regardless of where you live too. I have a distance option too that can be extremely helpful to help you get on the right path. So thanks for watching.